what was your introduction into coaching? How did you get into it?
Oh, coaching. I can answer that real quick. Coaching my year when I was 15, coaching my sister's basketball team that was a year 7.
Wow. Okay.
And then from Mr. Burgess, the PE teacher, by the time I was 16, you're going to coach the under 15 team. So that started at school.
Great.
So that, because all the years that I was playing, I was teaching. All the years that I played, if there wasn't a class, I set one up. So I was always teaching skills with kids, and from the age of 15, every year I was running my own camps as a pro. I did all of that all the way through. I'd take on extra work. I worked the summer camps, as I said to you before. So there was never not a time where I wasn't teaching somebody to play basketball.
Right.
From 14 years old.
So then from Manchester, what was your first kind of like that after that year? Where did you start?
I went back to Halifax and I coached the Calderdale in Calderdale. So we had some name dropping: Ian McKinney, Jason Swain,
and I you know, this is now where every young coach needs to understand, you know, there is, you know, a lot of players that are being developed throughout the country. And first of all, that you don't actually understand their history and where they started. And you know, you have impacted so many high level players and what I consider technically high level players as well. So yeah, continue with Ian, Jason,
Chris Meller. There was a kid that to me was still the best kid I ever coached, but he went back to football from Manchester, a kid called Eddie Saunders, which is by far and away the best player I've ever coached in the UK. But he left at 19, got fed up with the game, and went to football, then became a model. It's not even close how good he was. I used to call him Baby Magic.
Okay.
He was a 6'4" point guard then. One of Manchester Giants kids, Manchester United's kids, left there and came to me for 2 seasons. But Swaney and McKinney were 14 years old. Swaney was a footballer.
Wow.
You know, Ian, I knew his father from Leeds. And there's a group of kids that I had there. And I just started my career with them because while I was playing at Calderdale, I carried on teaching basketball sessions.
Yes.
So again, they were part of those basketball sessions, and those kids would go off and play in the local leagues or whatever they did. But there was a dozen kids, boys and girls, who ended up going to the States. Many of them we don't even know. I've got some kids that played 4 years at Virginia Commonwealth. A girl never came back.
Yeah, sure.
You know, so McKinney and Swaney, they played Division II men. Division II, yeah, there was only 2 nationally then. It was Division I or Division II. So that group of 15-year-olds, 16-year-olds played Division II men. They never played juniors. So I say Chris Meller, the current Bradford coach, there's a couple of kids from Manchester, Keith Howard. They were all under 18s, but they played Division II men. I wasn't a big believer in playing junior basketball. I never could get my head around that. So we bullied them and said, no, you're going to get your backside onto you early, and you're going to be in this thing. And first year we were like 20 and 4 and 20. Then we were 11 and 11. And so these kids are now 17, of course, and they're getting it done for me.
Right.
Okay, and then I get a call from an old friend of mine that used to be the center manager in Liverpool, who's now setting up a franchise in Doncaster.
Okay.
And of course, guess who I bring with me? Swaney, McKinney, Jamie Edwards.
Yeah.
Yeah, they all come along. So it really, those kids have been with me since 14. So the number 1 and number 2 and 3 3-point shooting in British basketball history, as far as British players are concerned, were in me with a little gym in Halifax.
Unbelievable. Yeah. That's unbelievable. What went to Doncaster? Doncaster were playing at that moment. Were they in Division 1?
Nationally, Division 1.
And then they went in. Did they make it into the BBL, or we? Yeah,
we won everything that year. We won everything that year, and we again small little town, but they filled this place. It was jumping. I had Tony Holly was my American. So here's a conversation. Tony was playing at Bolton. We played McKinney and Swaney and them had played against him in Halifax in Division 2. He was playing for Bolton. This dude was like the fridge.
Yeah.
Like, he was like 500 pounds. And all I remember was he could rebound. And as big as he was, he could run. So he came, he said, look, I'm interested. I said, look, T, I'm not taking to you till you've lost 40 pounds. So you can stay here all your life, but you're 2-a-days till you lose 40 pounds. And at that point, we're ready to go. Okay. Of course, Tony being Tony gets mad at me, but I used to say, I don't care. All right, a lot of respect for him, but he respected me because he knew I didn't care. I didn't care where you're from. Lose the weight, he lost it. And he just set the world on fire for me because he could do the things I wanted to do, which is lead, tremendous leadership skills for me. He could rebound the ball, and if we needed a bucket, he's coming up with it. And the example that he set to me, Swaney started for me at 17. Stuart Solomon, Swaney, and all those guys that came up at Doncaster, we were undefeated in the regular season. We lost in the cup semi-final, national cup semi-final to Leicester Riders. I was in the stands as I got thrown the game before.
Right, okay.
We lost by 8, and I got Jerry Jenkins and them on the Ziggy. They're lucky I wasn't coaching that day. I was ready for them. So I got thrown. We won it all. We lost at Wembley in the final. We went to the BBL. And by that time, I'd made enough enemies in Doncaster, not with the fans or the centre, but with the previous board. You remember we used to have these amateur committees where you had
yeah.
Long story short, they didn't like the fact, and to this day, I tell them that when they say, you didn't like the fact that we'd won and you assumed that I had all this power. I'm not interested in that. I just want to put a team together that wins. Let's do that. And they really took advantage because by now, John Carwood sponsoring the team.
Yeah, that's...
big, huge sponsorship deal that was for 3 years.
Yeah.
Right? I'd instigated that. Let's become John Carr Panthers again. Met with the MD, and he's like, yeah, I agree to that. They weren't involved.
Right.
So now I've recruited the team. I've raised the money. My boy runs the center. I was just doing what I thought was the right thing to do. I don't want to own a basketball club. We don't travel like this. The boys some boys were moaning that we train twice a day. Right. Individual workout in the morning in the lift. Go get your lunch. This is how it was set up. This is how it was set up in 92. Come in, individual skills, go lift, get lunch. Come in early, get breakfast. Some of the players are like, no, he's making us work too hard. So
there's a number of...
So in the BBL, I coached 8 games where 3 and 5. About ready to make some changes. I'm like, I need to upgrade the personnel. And I can see this coming because nobody wants to talk to me. They come into me and they say, Kurt, we need you to resign. I said, resign? We're 3 and 5. We're rolling. We're getting ready to do work. First year in the BBL, they're like, I'm like, you know what? You're going to find me, but I ain't resigning. So we're going to make it messy. So I left it. I didn't make it messy. I said, I'm not resigning. You find me, you fire me, coach. And then that was the start of what I would call going backwards in terms of my career, looking at it and thinking, all I try to do is do it the right way, and it's not really welcome. And by that time, you get a reputation for being a hardhead. And I am a hardhead. If it's not right, it's right. It's not right. I'm not compromising myself. I'm not good at compromising myself. That's my biggest weakness.
Sure.
I'm like, no, I'm not asking for the world, but detail matters. And at that time, T, that we're in a league and in a country where, and then obviously as a young man, you don't realize that not everybody comes to the game for the same reasons I did. I assumed that they did.
Sure, yeah.
I was naive.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm 32 years old. It's my first job. We won everything. I'm in the BBL. This is my first job.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you understand, T, that Division 1 team was my first job.
Yeah.
As a coach.
What?
So within 18 months, I've gone from not coaching to being in the BBL.
It's amazing. What?
But I don't know.
At that time, what was your thought process then as a coach? Did you think I'm going to wait or do some work, but wait for the next professional job?
No, I wasn't that calculating. First of all, I had a young family, and I wasn't, again, just like as a player, I'd looked around the league. I looked at what all the other coaches were going through. I'm looking at the pay. I'm looking at the living situation. I'm thinking, this is not good. This is not good. You know, what I should have done is take my French name and do off to France.
Yeah, for sure. Being incredible.
You know what I mean?
Another country.
You know, so then I end up going around and I end up coaching some amateur teams in Bolton. And I enjoyed that. I enjoyed that with those guys. It was, you know, it was classic 2 nights a week. But these guys showed up every day. It wasn't like, oh, I can't make it tonight because my wife's sick. To be fair, those kids at Bolton and Bury, they were there every night, did what they had to do. And then I got a call from Loughborough University. Okay, this is interesting. This is the UK's #1 university. Let's go and have a look. Ooh, well, my first night there was 100 kids in this arena, in this brand new facility, because obviously I'd ran my camps there.
Sure.
And this kid comes up to me, I can't remember his name, and said, Coach, this is the 10 guys we picked already. You just need 2. So I'm the chairman of the club. He's about 19, 20 years old, this kid. He's classic. He said, so you're just trying to find 2 players from, and literally there was 3 court, there must have been 60 other players there. So I turned around to this guy and I said, sorry, I don't know who you are, but you need to just go and join the rest of them. So typically me, I get rid of 8 of the previous year's team, get 8 freshmen in, and we go to 3 straight national finals, win 1, lose 2.
Wow.
But guess what? Loughborough University it wasn't set up to be like it was the rugby team or the swimming team or the gymnastics or whatever it is. It was basketball, and it's one of those foreign sports over there, and it's okay. Yeah, we've just gone to 3 straight box finals. So I'm like, okay, so that's the end of that. And at that moment in time, I'm thinking, I've just literally gone from having these dreams and aspirations. And it kind of summed it up, because you were, as a young pro, as Manchester was one of the top 4 clubs in the country at that time, great owner. I'd created a situation with Doncaster where I thought, wow, we could do something here. They didn't want it. I've come to Loughborough, we win, but they don't want it. And then I begin to realize, actually, we're not a professional sport in this country, and we have no intention to be. That was my opinion.
Sure.
So then I went underground.
Right. Before that, you were working. Had you taken a role with the England under-20s, under-22s team?
Yeah. I was the first year. I was the assistant coach to Dave Ranson.
Right. What year was
the second year?
What year was that? And where were you? Were you still coaching?
I was at Doncaster, so it would have been 91, 92. And then 93, 94, I was the head coach of the under-20s. I had a great side. But our problem is we were going to qualify for Group B, and they told me they didn't have the money if we qualified to go from Group B to Group A.
Yeah, where have we heard that story from?
And that was me done. That was me done.
Right.
I refused.
That's really an interesting, important point, because, you know, I've always, there are certain coaches that should be involved in, you know, in pro, and you know, you could have succeeded at any level, pro, junior development, but national junior team development, you should have been the head of national junior team development. Whether you were one of the coaches or whether you were directing the program, because you have the vision and understanding at that, not just at that time, but throughout the whole period. So had you also run into some problems? You've been pretty vocal to the governing body at that time, or it was just the case of you just saying, I don't want to do this unless it's done properly?
Okay, I hadn't had any upfront problems, except that the biggest problem is that all coaches have, if you coach a national scene, is the preparation is not accounted for.
No.
You're going to tie both my hands behind my back and ask me to go and qualify. Now, I don't need an England badge that bad. It wasn't a big deal for me coaching the national teams. Yes, you heard me say that. because I played for England under 15s, got my ass kicked because we were badly prepared. I played for the 17s, same thing. Played for them, Titmus and them. The day I resigned is the day Titmus picked me for the senior men's team.
Wow.
To go to Germany. And same thing there. We're going to Germany to play our campaign. How long we got? 7 days. So all the way through my career, there's been an idea that if you were British, it's English in this particular case, that you were going to draw the short straw, and it was supposed to be some kind of honor to go to get your ass kicked because you're wearing 3 lions on a shirt. I didn't buy that.
Right.
And I still don't. That's not an honor. It wasn't an honor. Because you can't do what's right by us. What I'm saying is, can you raise the money or create an environment that at least allows us to prepare the same way that our opponents are? No more, no less.
Interesting point. Now, let's really start to get into really what this podcast is about, like the pure coaching side. Firstly, who were your earliest coaching influences? And then secondly, what was your philosophy when you took over a team, whether it was the men's team or junior team at that time, early in your career? What were some of your early
in my career, going back to my PE teacher, because he's very well organized, exceptionally well prepared, and was big on discipline. So straight away, those things carried me as a player. Okay, but as soon as I went to teach, teaching.
Yeah, Coach, it's so interesting.
To be honest with you, my biggest coach was my mother.
Right.
My mother was my biggest influence. I'm not going to lie. You did mess about. Her advice to me: how about this for the best thing, coaching philosophy or playing philosophy ever? It doesn't matter if you need to know anything except you need to be twice as good. Don't need to read another book.
No, that's an interesting discipline. Yeah.
I didn't need to read another book.
Yeah.
It doesn't matter, son, what you do as long as you're twice as good as whoever you're going against. That way they can't ignore you.
No.
Not as good.
No. Interesting.
So what else do I need? So between David Burgess and my mother, who were in cohorts, those two, she was like the woman that said to him, you need to beat him if he's messing about in school. Not that I ever did. You know what I mean? But between those two and my head teacher, David, Mr. Greeley, who said, school will always be there. His ability to go away and play for his country and go and play will never. So whatever happens, we need to get this guy away with the national teams.
Right.
So the support group was tremendous, but the philosophy was, number one, my mother's statement.
Sure.
You can't be as good. So to me, that meant hard work and preparation. David Burgess had the philosophy of organized gym, organized session, discipline in your behavior, hard work. So the building blocks to teaching effectively, and living life.
Yes.
So that was ingrained very, 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 very early.
Right.
So I just took that with me. I consciously took that with me.
And then your earliest basketball people that were influencing you from a coaching standpoint.
Yeah. Peter Mintoff was a teacher. He's a trained teacher by profession.
Sure.
So if you went to his sessions, they were organized that way.
Right.
Drills were set up in the right manner. There was teaching of skills. There was drilling of skills mixed in with the competition, breakdown. So he was very good at putting the sessions together. So I had to complete a practice session. Jimmy Smith, on the other hand, didn't do a lot, but what he did, again, was tough, organized, and with purpose. So what I liked about Jimmy's coaching, he didn't do so much teaching, that in the short period of time that we had, the 2 nights a week, he had that planned and organized. So very early in Nottingham, I'd had that wonderful experience of what it takes to start to develop a teaching career, stroke coaching career.
Right. So from there, now you're working with these teams. Are you? Because I know you go in, you're planning these sessions. I mean, you're one thing that I want to get over is your dedication to the craft of coaching. And, you know,
Right.
where did that come from? Because like you said, you were going to America as a player, but then as a young coach, you were making some serious, you know, inroads. You were going to America, you were going to Europe, you were taking, you know, this kind of like knowledge from a huge array of coaches. What was the driving process with that?
Well, going back to, I remember my first trip to Europe with the national teams, particularly the under-17 team, and playing a European Championship in Greece, first round. We played Greece in Greece, first game. And you remember the movie Ghost?
Yeah.
I looked along the line of my teammates when the Greek national anthem was playing. There were 7,000 Greeks with blue and white ticker tape, literally 7,000 Greeks. And I saw my teammates' spirits just all disappear out the door, except Kevin Penny's, which I kind of knew. He was up for it.
Right.
But the coaches at that point knew that we were underprepared. They knew we were just underprepared. Right. And that was the one thing I always said, I'll never, never, ever not be prepared. It taught me something. Oh. So, like you said, when I worked camps, remember from the age of my first teaching camp, I was 17 when I went to, 16. I went to work camp the first time. I worked Morgan State and Julius Irving's camp as a teacher, as a coach, sure. Just doing stations.
Yeah.
So then every night there'd be a coaching clinic. So when I did Rolly Massimino's camp for 2 years, Jay Wright was his third assistant, wow. Okay, with Steve Fisher, PJ Colissimo, all come and talk afterwards. Louis Conaseca, it was like the Italian fucking, but they all came and spoke. So every night, guess what? After I'd finished playing, those guys would be in the room just talking ball. Recruitment, these kids don't work hard enough. This is a drill. This is what we do. This is how we do it. And I did that every year. So I did Syracuse's camp with Jimmy Boeheim. I did John Thompson's camp, Morgan Wooden, which is a great camp. That's probably the best of them.
Yeah.
That was the best of them in terms of teaching.
Teaching. Is that one of the big influences? Because, you know, he was...
Yeah, big time. I sat with the all-time winning coach of Division I, Jimmy Phelan, and Morgan Wooden in an office, just me and them. 2 hours, they sat me down. Right. And they just said, this is it. Preparation, preparation, preparation.
Sure. And this is really important, I think. It's an important point I want to try to get from you, but also to get across to the viewers. But as a young British coach, okay, you just felt, look, I got to go in, I want to ask these questions. You know, how did that process go? You just didn't feel anything about that, and that's what you did? Because I feel...
Yeah, I just think there was no, I didn't need a course. I'm not good with courses, Steve. Right? What I need is education. Sure. I mean, real education. Because to be honest with you, what the Spanish coach does, we can't apply in England.
Interesting.
But so I didn't take the coaching element. What I took was the teaching element. So all my journey was finding about techniques, skill development, how to break it, because that's the scenario I was in. And you learn stations. You know, Bob Knight's camp is stations.
It's stations, exactly.
Stations. We don't do stations anymore.
No, we don't. No.
I'm like, if you're teaching young people to play, what better than stations? Every practice.
Yeah, absolutely.
Right? So I remember I hadn't learned to coach yet, T. I was still concerned about making plays good enough because I didn't feel I needed to do too much coaching because my kids were terrible. Swaney was terrible. He didn't need to know pick and roll. He needed to know about the forearm and how to let it go. You know, McKinney was slow as hell. I mean, you talk about two slow kids. What am I going to, well, they can space the floor. What do they need to teach? And then I got all the teaching coaches and I saw Hopler when Hopler was still playing. So what I did when I went to these camps, I looked at the stations and how the Americans taught the games and how they broke the skills down. And what I really got was, that was the country that had, there in Lithuania and Croatia had the same mentality, that tough nose, no nonsense, which sit with me. You know, we want to make it fun doing it right, but I'm not here to make it fun. I'm trying to make players here. So that I couldn't get here because nobody was ingrained in doing it. There were no basketball camps. The coaching clinics at that point consisted of bringing an Italian and Spaniard or an American over here to talk about what offense they run. Mm. Listen, I'm sure there's lots of, that's great for those and BBL coaches and the Division I coaches, but at that point, I'm still working with 14, 15-year-old kids. As I got into the coaching, I go back to Villanova, I go back to meet Raleigh, I go back to a guy called Tom Galizzi, another Italian, who was really my coaching mentor from CW Post College in Long Island.
A great teaching school.
I coached against him I played against him in Hungary, his college team. He recruited me, but at that time I'm in Gateshead living it up. I'm not sitting in no dorm with some strangers, so I'm like, no. But he became my coaching mentor. Tom was a great strategist. You know, he knew what defense would just choke teams. He knew how to really, take it again. Another fellow Italian, so we taught my Italians today. Messina. Vittorio Messina. Advantage, disadvantage. That's it. So we got to figure out.
Yeah.
Nothing more.
Nope.
You talking, but Tom was doing that with me in the 80s. Tom was teaching me how to break tape to find an advantage or to create an advantage. He was doing that 20 years before me every summer. Yeah. I'd go to LIU, we'd go for dinner, we'd sit, he'd pick me up every day, we'd watch film for hours on Long Island. I'd go to St. John's, I'd go everywhere and everywhere. And then what happened was how I really broke into that next level of coaching with Tom, because I could analyze things very quickly. Sure. You give me 5 minutes of tape and I've got it. I don't need 3 years of tape. I've got it. But I went to Coach Knight's coaching clinic at Indiana. And that was the game changer.
Interesting. That's really...
When I went to Indiana to watch Coach Knight for 3 days, that changed everything.
Right.
Because not only did he teach, but he was so specific in how you break the other team down and what you have to do to win.
Yeah.
That it's like clarity. He was one of those. He didn't want no useless talk, no phraseology. Get it to the point where the kid understands it. And now implement that every day in practice. So the drills that I saw of how he did that, and now you got breakdown tape. And that philosophy for coaching kids at my age was big.
So were you were taking obviously, like we all do, but you were taking some of the best drills that you saw, you were writing them down. But I've seen you run some drills which, I don't believe that were being run elsewhere. Where did that that mind, because, that's something that's not taught on any governing body award course. It's not really even discussed, but drill creation, to me, I saw, Laszlo Nemeth was a magician with drill creation, and I've seen you with, being a magician, coming up with stuff. Even a year and a half ago when I saw you in Birmingham, some of the stuff that you ran there, it's just, that's not something that you see in just any coaching video. So where were you? Where does your mind? Where are you starting to develop that?
I'm the ultimate thief in some respects, but at the same time, I take a lot of my motivation from chefs, band leaders, or anything to do with anything that's not basketball.
Interesting.
And one of the things that I learned from when I watch people cook is they make the most of the ingredients.
Right.
So I got 6 balls, 6 chairs. This is my kids. This is what they're about. I want to keep them engaged, but I like multiple. When I'm instructing, not teaching, I like drills that effectively give me multiple things that I'm working on. So from teaching the individual skills, I look at instruction, which is a separate skill. And now I'm looking at how do I have a drill that gives me multiple breakdowns of a particular series of skills. So if I'm going to do dribbling, finishing at the bucket, well, he's got to be able to hesitate, get a chair, break that down, make the crossover. He's got to get a second read, get another chair, hesitate, look, go. So all the time you're looking at the details of what might happen in the game, and you can't simulate that, but you can simulate the skills that's required to do it.
Right.
And depending on the boys and girls that I've got, I go home and I'm like, okay, these. Now what can we do? Okay, tell you what, let's just put some, here's one of the great ones I have. I have a drill and the kids love it. I put 2 minutes on the clock and I'll run this drill for 15, 16 minutes. And I'll say to my point guards, you got to score 28 points in 2 minutes, full court.
Right.
You can only shoot one left-handed layup. What shot are they? What are they working at?
Well, if they can only make one left
in 2 minutes,
right?
You can't shoot twos, can you?
No, absolutely not. No.
So you're working at pushing the ball and making a 3-8 transition.
Yeah. Okay. Love it.
Swaney, if you think about it now.
Yeah.
But Swaney wouldn't do it off the dribble. He used to do it running.
Right.
All right. And so what we do is, if you make a 3, you get 2 free throws, but it's 1-on-1. Now the clock's ticking. So now you've got to go rebound the ball. You've got to get to the baseline. You've got to get to the other 3-point line in 3 seconds. So now we're working at conditioning, working at open court finishing. We're working at 3 throws when you're tired. We're at mental concentration. Yeah. All the fundamental things, because the walk-up 3 is a different shot off the bounce.
Oh, really tough shot, yeah.
The advancement of that is we'll stick 2 or 3 chairs in the way.
Right. That's great stuff.
Okay. So
where did your perspective, like when do you start looking at things like, you know, like you've talked to me about before, like dance and martial arts? Where did you start getting those type of like influences? Childhood
again. I grew up in a city where I trained when I went to college the first year. Nigel Pearson, ring a bell?
Yeah, Nigel Pearson.
He was the Watford manager.
Absolutely, yeah.
I went to school with him.
Wow.
But I went to school with Sharon Gibson, which is there was Tessa Sanderson, can I forget her name now?
Fatima Whitbread.
Fatima Whitbread. Sharon was the 3rd on that javelin team, Nottingham.
Yeah.
Adi and Kenny were world champions at 2 different weights at karate. Same city.
Wow.
Grew up around them. Some brothers, there were 2 brothers called Langs, Tony and it was Tony Lang, and his Kirkland was world championship. Kirkland was a middle lightweight world championship boxer, all from Nottingham. I watched them train. Every one of them totally different to my sport.
Oh.
And I just picked it up and I'd watch what they were doing.
Yeah.
Like I could add that. And even then, as an athlete, I'm thinking I could add that to my training. So I'd go to the boxing gym. I'd watch the martial artists work. I'd watch Sharon lift. I'd watch Sharon train. Nigel Pearson, I remember not being, he was at sixth form. He wasn't he didn't turn pro till he was 19.
Right.
And that was semi-pro. But what he had is a great positional sense, a great mind, and he wasn't fast at all. In fact, he was the opposite. But he had quick feet. And he won't know that I'd study him. So anywhere there was coming up, remember we had Bruce Lee and the Kung Fu stuff?
Sure. Yeah.
That was massive. So you had all these influences that I just tell you honestly, I just used to watch performance. Yeah. The Brazilian football team of the 70s, they talk about pass and move. The Dutch football team, this is not new. Man City's not new.
No.
And I just watched those coaches work, and I'd listen to philosophies, and I'd read their books, and I'd listen to the coaches. And I just got that creativity from mixing different levels, different types of sport, and thinking, hang on, that's a drill that can be adapted. I didn't follow basketball coaches to learn new things. Basketball coaches helped me reinforce things, but other sports really have a new way of looking at the world. What are they doing?
Well, it's interesting. I think that I mean, definitely, rugby. I've listened to rugby and soccer
Yeah.
coaches. They've been following basketball coaches for a long while now. But I've always felt that just immersing yourself and going and seeing people do something at a high level, you can always pick up something, even if it's just one thing that you take back into a drill or into a practice, or even how a coach talks to a set of players and stuff. There's always something you can learn. And I think that a lot of our coaches in our country they're not immersing themselves in enough of these type of environments. So that's a really interesting point.
Yeah, that's how I learned. That's how I created stuff. And literally, I would go anywhere where somebody was doing something that was creative and figure out how could I adapt it. I watch, like I say, when you look at how the top chefs works their teams in the kitchen. You look at the language that they use. You've got to be sharp. You've got to be articulate. You've got to, things work like in a certain way. You go into a great kitchen, and the first thing you see is organization. And what's the French word for it? I think it's met en place. The met en place means everything in order.
Wow. That's a great...
you come into my gym.
I've heard a lot of people, yeah, I've heard a lot of coaches talk. I've never heard that, being like described in those terms, and that's an unbelievable point, and I wouldn't even picked up on that myself. You're totally right, the organization. And that's something that, I was very lucky when I started coaching to be able to have some of the most organized coaches like Coach Tivmus and Coach Dunning, that were really detail orientated. And that's obviously what I tried to take on there. But, that's a great point. It's a great point.
You can't work in a top restaurant in the world if you're not organized.
No, that's a great point. Moving on, where was you went to South Nottingham College, which is where we had some battles there. What was the process with regards to that? Because at that time you were running your camp programs, some of the most successful camps in the country, certainly Run Press Run, and going into the Adidas stuff. You could talk about that, but also you obviously had that desire to take your development skills and try to be in a program that you felt you had complete control of, and that you could actually really define and work.
Right. Well, after a year, I took a year out of the game between Loughborough and Southmont. I just took a year out. I was working in a hotel. I used to love working in bars, and I'm a non-drinker. I mean, I don't drink at all. But I used to love working in bars, and I went to this bar. I said, "Listen, I'm looking for," because I was researching during the day and doing some teaching, but I wasn't coaching or anything. So I was really re-educating myself. I'd made a load of trips: Indiana, I'd gone to Chicago, I'd gone to a lot of Lithuania, I'd gone to a lot of countries that year. So I took a year out, and around about the springtime, I just said, it's time to look forward to September. So I looked around the schools and colleges and what's going on, and I just noticed that Southmont College had a football program that they called a football academy. So I thought, I tell you what, I'm going to write. I found out who the head of sport was, and I thought, I'm going to write him a letter. Well, the letter got there. The next day, she called me back, Yvonne Kelly.
Wow.
And she's like, we need to meet. And that was it. That morning, we shook hands, and she said, right, we're having an academy. And she gave me the green light. I had 8 kids the first year. Some Nottingham kids, Mark Woodhouse.
Sure. Some really good.
David Watts.
Yeah. Tintin, yeah.
Tristan Lawson. Anthony Haas. So I went around the Nottingham to find all the kids that wanted to play. Most of them weren't going to come to me. It's like, who are you? So this is my city. And these dudes, because obviously I left home a lot. They had no idea. Yeah. So I convinced Mark Woodhouse to come. David Watts I'd met at camp at 17, had never played a game in his life. No idea. Just came to camp because he was tall and could run. Never played at 17.
Unbelievable.
Both of them had not made their National League conference junior team. Neither of them. Okay? So I'm like, okay, so there's 2 kids at 6'9" and 6'7" that can both run, both jump, athletic as hell, keen as hell, and nobody's teaching them to play. And that was the city all over. That was all over Nottingham. That's how it was. So South Knot situation gave me the opportunity to build what I thought could be a program. We had it, not just the FE 16 to 18, but we had it what's called a foundation degree. So we could get boys in 18 years old. We've got some kids from Solent. We've got kids. And so we could put a National League team together. So again, instead of doing juniors like the colleges do now, we took the 16 to 19-year-olds, mixed them with the 18 to 19-year-olds, and we just went straight to the National League.
Yeah, which I still believe there's definitely there's a lot of advantages to that, especially with the most, having them not like in National Junior League. But
so I worked those guys to death, and I have to be grateful to those boys because they allowed me to go back into full-time coaching. But again, it was one of those strange things. You think you're full-time coaching, but at college you end up having to do everything: drive the bus, wash the kit. You know that story, T. And eventually what happened was we had some really great years. We developed some really good kids. As you know, you coached against Tintin and those guys and a few others that you probably didn't even know where were mine. But it became a numbers game. One year where I had 5 coaches working for me, we had 64 kids in the program. I'm like, I can't do this. No. It's not why I came to it.
Sure.
So again, me being stubborn, I just walked out. What end of the year? Nice job. Two babies now, 2 children, wife. I'm like, that's it, done.
And what year? That would have been 20.
Wow. When did I leave there?
Well, I started at Everton 2008. So you would that would have been
round about that time. Round about that time.
Hackney. So
round about that time.
So it's taken, in between that period and then you now in Birmingham, at South Birmingham College. What's the process between that period of time to get into this next stop?
So you can imagine my coaching career there wasn't one at that point in terms of coaching. But I was still fortunate enough because I could teach. I would go to local universities and players would come to me in the off season.
Sure.
People still wanted me to work them out. So what they call skills coaches now, or trainers. I mean, again, I've been doing that all my life, and that was a great revenue source because I'll be honest with you, back then, if you're going to make the investment in your career, then it's a serious one. I'm not carrying a bag of balls. I'm not getting up unless you're serious. So from the business, I knew how to package myself as a skills coach.
Sure.
Although I didn't call myself a skills coach, but I knew how, player development. I knew how to package it. I knew what players I would work with. And so really in the summer particularly, I would do okay. Some years were lean. Some years were fine. Some years were horrible. But generally speaking, I bounced around that for a while. And that kept me through. I mean, I did some coaching because my 2 sons were playing. So the team that they were going to at Mansfield, again, Division 3 or Division 2 National League, they needed somewhere to play. They asked me if I coach. I said yes. So I kind of did that. Then I stopped coaching. And then I really had this period where I said I just need to review. And for the last 5 years before I went to Aston, I really had to take some really deep stock of what's going on because I'm not 25 anymore.
No.
You know what I mean? So at that point, I'm now having to look at the business of me being a coach as what is the business of coaching? Not who am I going to coach? What am I going to win? But how does this turn into a legitimate source of income as well as pleasure? And it's been a struggle because what you don't do as a coach is you don't see yourself as an asset. You don't see yourself as an expert. So you charge accordingly to what standard rates are.
Yes.
Well, first of all, I realized that what I got wrong at South Knots is that I wasn't so much as a coach, but I was a revenue generator for the colleges. And it doesn't take much to see, T, if we had 65 kids at £5,000 each in 1 year, what you're offering me per hour,
yes.
No. And a lot of coaches in the country are getting done like this. You guys that have got 30 kids in your program, you need to have a different conversation.
Absolutely.
You're actually a recruitment consultant.
Yep.
Who happens to be able to coach.
Absolutely. There's not even a question about that.
So those younger guys, seriously, you need to reframe what your business is. Recruitment is part of what you do. Coaching is the second part.
Yeah.
And so that once I got that, I then started to, over the process of the last couple of 3 years, just reframe and take the time not to rush, because it was going to be my last drive. Where I'm at now, that's right. So you got to be different. So in the year that I ended up at Aston, the previous 2 or 3 years, I was literally working with guys from the local universities and some pros and player development, skills coaching it.
Yeah.
That's how I was making a living.
Let's just talk about a couple of things to do with that whole process. But firstly, no BBL team or, like a professional setup have approached you to, to take a small role in developing players.
No.
That's really where we fall down in this country, where, of course you must have felt this. I feel this at times as well. If we were in Spain, Italy, France, wherever, there'd be multiple opportunities for you. You would have the phone, you would have many times. How would you say what lessons have I think you've given some of the lessons that you learned there. What have you changed? What's changing from a basketball philosophy in how you're approaching the game and how you're teaching the game? Obviously, the game has changed in such a big way. Game is now dominated by the 3-point line. We have to, as coaches, just accept that the young person, their complete makeup as young people has changed, i.e. their work ethic, their ability to take coaching / criticism, the toughness, the mental and physical toughness of young people is completely different to when we started playing, you started playing, and you started coaching. So how have you evolved as a coach in that respect?
Well, with regard to the 3-point line today, I find that funny because I've always taught it.
Interesting. That's a great point.
But think about it. It's McKinney and Swaney. If you go online and check out who are the top English 3-point shooters, they'll be in the top 10.
Yep.
And Swaney will be close to the top. So it's never been an issue for me.
No.
So as modern as it is, as soon as they invented the 3-point line 25 years ago, I'm thinking, I got to use this. Why? Because it was obvious, is a 3-point line. But more importantly, again, looking at those mentors and people that I saw, one of the first people that I saw use it properly was Ricky Pitino.
Great stuff.
And he changed the college game.
Yep. Well, I was at his camps as well, so. Right.
The Europeans had always done it. So really, for me, I didn't need to think about, I laugh when they say change now. I'm like, well, we were 20 years ago. I was 30 years ago teaching 3-point shooting. Kazi Russell, I was at Leeds, and Calvin Murphy were at Leeds with an NBA camp with Jack Ramsey, right? From the Portland Trailblazers.
Sure, yeah, absolutely.
They did an NBA coaching clinic in Leeds in the 80s, and I was still playing, and I went to it. And Kazi Russell and Calvin Murphy were like, make a 3-point shot at 2 by just taking your momentum. So that was in my brain. I shot threes.
Okay.
Catch, shoot. So teaching it to me, well, of course it's going to go that way. There's a 3-point line. So with respect to how it changed me, it didn't really change me. It hasn't changed me at all. It's just because David Watts. What did Tintin shoot?
Shot the 3.
And what size was he?
He's like 6'7", 6'8".
Right.
Yeah.
So everybody's got to be able to shoot. To me, I don't care. The first thing I teach a kid is, can you shoot? And you're going to learn to shoot. Don't care if you're 4 foot or 9 foot. You're going to learn to shoot. You've got to make free throws.
Yeah.
Otherwise, you're no use to me on the floor. It doesn't have to be a 3-ball, but you've got to be able to shoot the ball. My philosophy, the thing that's changed probably more than anything for me is twofold. First of all, I see the business of basketball, not basketball the sport. So there's a context to it. Even in a high school, they make a living by recruiting students. If I understand the recruitment process, i.e. like a college coach, and if I recruit them, now I'm not just recruiting for the best players, but I'm recruiting enough players to make it substantially viable for the school, I understand the business of basketball and where it sits in. So that's changed dramatically. So my first thing now is I'm far more strategic rather than implementing.
Yeah.
I know I can coach, but that's not the priority. First of all, is there a strategic fit with the school, with the club? And your answer to why I wouldn't coach in the BBL, there's nothing strategically that I see that fits for me. And that's nothing to do with the fact that it's a great league and it does what it's doing. That's just from a very selfish, I don't look for what they want.
No.
I'm looking, does it meet my needs?
Sure. Sure.
So it's, you know, again, I have nothing but respect for those people that put their hand in the money and run those teams, but it doesn't fit what I want strategically for my career. So that's changed. I'm much more mature about, hang on, you can't be yes to everybody. You've probably got to spend your time, Curtis, being against most people, right? Because that's you, that's being honest. And the thing with the boys that I'm the one, I select you. You don't come to my school and say, Coach, can I enroll? No, you can't. I need to interview you. I don't care whether you've never played before or not, because I can teach you to play. I want to know who your family is. And are they serious about your career, whether it's college or turning pros? No. I want to know what the head principal's goals are. What are their financial aspirations? What are their personal aspirations for sport? So if you're not a sport Billy, I'm not going to a place where the sport isn't everything. No. Where the principal plays tiddlywinks or something. No. I want to know, what sport did you play? At what level did you play? And how competitive you are. And I interview the heads. I interview the colleagues. Reframing from a philosophical point of view, I'm now having to reframe my conversations with my staff because I've moved on. So now, having been in my current job, I'm taking stock, which is a business thing. You evaluate, right?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah.
You're constantly evaluating your business and its performance, right? So now, rather than coming in, it's another year, I have to re-engage my staff. What are you about? What's your why? You know, what do you want? What do you really want? Are they capable of doing the things they say they're going to do? In lieu of the fact that I'm saying to you, that my philosophy is, I've got hardity. I'm now only interested on a kid that wants to take on his world and win. Let me clarify that.
Yeah.
He's going to go to Loughborough University. He's never going to be good enough to go to the States. He's not turning pro. He's a great student, wants to play for Mark. Mark's a good coach at Loughborough University. Well-organized guy, young coach, wants to put his stuff together. I'm now preparing him to that kid not to go to Loughborough University, a freshman, and sit on the bench. I'm going to prepare you to go to Loughborough and kill it. Right. Here's the model of work. This is what you're signing up to. Oh, by the way, I spoke to your parents and they say your attitude towards looking after yourselves is not good. You can't come here. I wouldn't have engaged the parents.
Interesting. Yeah.
Parents are going to tell me a lot about that boy.
Yeah.
Are the parents willing to invest the money in it's going to take to get that boy what he wants?
Sure.
So there's a lot of strategic questions that need answers before I even get to that boy. If he can't pass that, we test the boys in detail. Yep. They fail them, you're not coming on the court with me. So I've changed in terms of it's far more professional in its overall execution. Schools, teachers, parents. Then we get to the basketball.
Right.
Then we can look at whether you can make a right-handed layup. I want everything recorded. I want data. I want everything recorded. All your fitness stuff, the number of shots you take every day. It's 300 shots every morning between 7:30 and 8:45. That coach has to record the numbers of shots taken and where he's made them from.
Wow.
Because I know that's what's happening in Serbia.
Sure.
I know that's happening in Croatia.
Yeah. So I got a couple more questions. I want to fire through these very quickly, not the rapid fire ones, but these next two. First, so talking about that philosophy and the attention to detail that you have, what's your thoughts on British basketball, the British basketball coaching, the fraternity, which unfortunately isn't a fraternity? You know, what's your thoughts there? Because, I obviously I have that ability to be able to pick up the phone to you and to talk to you and to ask to come to your practices and stuff, but not many people have that opportunity. What are you frustrated that we're not together?
I'm frustrated with myself, really. I've got to start with myself, Tina. I've got a lot to answer for in that, because I think I need to just share more. And what you're doing now, I need to do it in terms of just putting video out there, just putting what I've learned out there. I've got lots of, I almost wrote a book, just giving it away, giving back, and trying to encourage people, to share. But I've got to say this, I think in terms of, it's very difficult for me, because I'd like to try to create my own satellite, my own world. I actually don't relate to the amateur game anymore, which is 4/5 of the country is amateur. 2 nights a week and a game on the weekend, and nothing in the summer says you're an amateur. I think we're brilliant as a nation at engaging in part-time sport.
Sure, I agree with
Basketball to me is a part-time sport, and with all due respect to the BBL, that's a part-time sport.
Yeah, and
a business and its execution, it's part-time. Every step of the way.
We're pretty aligned with that situation together.
Right. So to be fair to them, I think they do a great job doing what they do. I don't understand the culture because it's so removed from me.
Sure.
So it's difficult for me to be critical either way, because I don't understand it. I don't get it. And I really don't want to take any part in it.
No.
But I think from a fraternity coach's point, I think it's what you're doing is great. It's down to us senior guys, not to try and change how people behave, but to share. If nothing more, I can give what I've learned away, then fine. But I can't ask somebody to be, you got to be crazy to be me. One of the things that people don't understand is mentally, this has been tough.
Yeah, I understand that.
T, you know what it's like trying to work out a career as a basketball player, as a coach, emotionally, mentally, the things we sacrifice.
Absolutely.
For the dream of being a high quality, I want to be a high performing coach. And I am. And now I've decided on that. That means I have to remove myself for the majority of my fraternity brothers and sisters, because they're not. So it's 2 different worlds. I'm going to try and reach out to those young coaches that have done what I started doing, and say, listen, learn to speak French, learn to speak Spanish, develop your young coaching here, and then go move abroad.
Yeah,
I don't mean just literally move abroad.
No, that's a great point. But, I think my frustration and it's the reason why I wanted you as my first guest, is that there is an incredible amount of resource online now. You've got the ability with the Ryanair and EasyJet to go anywhere in Europe and see great coaches coach. And if you're really eager enough, you can do that. But we're not utilizing someone like yourself. If you want to understand about skill development, to go to one of your Astamana sessions, just sit there with your notebook, or now with your camera if you're allowed, and just to film some of these breakdown drills and how you go about setting up a skill and building a skill. We've got to start to understand that there are incredible resources, not just in internationally.
Yeah, I think I would say that's as much down to me. I'm a fossil. So most of the young guys and girls, they're not good. And that's my fault. I have made myself available to that community. So I will put my hands up and say, that's something we absolutely will be doing a better job with from this autumn. For those that want to be aspiring teachers of the game, not so much coaches, that's where I think I can help. So even if you are an amateur coach at 2 nights a week, I know I can put a great session for you 2 nights a week that you'll be able to do all your coaching. But that first 40 minutes, we can really do some great things, right? And I want to be supportive of those people as well as those coaches, because like I say, at my level, the only full-time basketball is in high school in the UK.
Yes.
16 and 19. And there's no resource. So our governing body doesn't put coaching courses on for part-time coaches. That's something that I'm wanting to do. Put a whole educational program together for coaches who've got 6 balls 2 nights a week.
Interesting.
I think I owe that community that.
Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Good. Right. I'm going to give to real rapid fire because I said this to you when we first, I wanted to ask you on that we could go for 3 hours and we would still be below what we needed to be. But I want these 3 questions. You got less than 24 seconds to answer each one of these questions. First one, favorite player to have coached throughout your career? I know that.
Favorite player to have coached throughout my career?
And that puts you really on the spot because when all your ex-players, you got
Eddie
thousands of
Saunders.
players.
Eddie Saunders.
Eddie Saunders, okay. Favorite all-time coach?
Favorite all-time coach? Pat Riley.
Pat Riley, okay, great. And have you got a favorite go-to saying or statement that you use?
Take on your world and win.
Okay, say that again.
Take on your world and win.
There you are. Great stuff. Great stuff. Now, final question. It's a serious one. I feel it's great to have you. And next week, I've actually got Coach Paul James, probably the longest tenured professional coach ever in our country. Yeah. But you know, you've got an incredible journey. You've been through so many aspects of the game in this country, and both in so many areas. You're so well read and culturally understanding. With the latest situation, you know, with the Black Lives Matter movement, what are your thoughts about British basketball? And more importantly, the representation of Black coaches in this game. Do you think that do you think that you were held back? Do you feel that there's obviously this considerably, we've got a long way to go, but have you got any thoughts to finish with today?
Yeah, I do. First of all, on the Black Lives Matter thing, I kind of broke it down, and I think, first of all, saying all lives matter. I think if you look around the world at this time, the atrocities in all the countries and still in European countries, yeah, and we close the blind to. So rather than it be of race, I think just generally speaking, we're not in a great place as a human race right now. No. But I think the question is not that the Black Lives Matter for me. When I looked at it carefully, I said, why do they matter slightly less?
Yeah, great point.
Particularly in America. They matter, but they matter slightly less.
Yes.
And that saddens me. You know, why does a poor kid's life or Latino's life matter slightly less? So again, as a human race, why is it culturally, you know, I mean, I grew up in a multicultural city. I was Irish, Italian, Ukrainian, Polish. I'm a Catholic kid. So all Catholic people had to live together because they couldn't go somewhere else. People forget I got a long memory. You know what I mean?
Yeah, sure.
The Italian people didn't speak English good. The Irish were Irish. There was a lot of prejudices then. And I lived through that. But why do they matter less is a question that we're not asking. And to me, the reason is simple, that with the world as it is in the West, in America particularly, and to a degree here, power is the most important thing to a certain sector of society. Politicians. Doing what right isn't.
Sure. Interesting point.
Doing what obtains power is more important than what's doing right.
Do you think that this is a crucial moment for our sport? Because for the first time, and I don't want to, it's not for me to fully be the one that says this, but I have grown up in a city and a multicultural area and society, and I've always championed, I've championed the best players. A lot of the best players that I've coached happen to be from a Caribbean or African descent. But do you think that this is a possibility that our sport could take this part and actually grow from it? Because where we were originally perceived as the Black urban sport, we now could be the solution to helping young Black people and that part of society. Or do you think that I'm reading too much into that?
No, I don't think you're reading too much into it all. I think it matters to care. To you, Coach, you care. I think the first point is that quite often we've got people in positions that don't care. They're not there to care. They're there to obtain and maintain power. And it's a very realistic, I'm not naive. That's what you go into power for.
Sure.
But I think the bigger issue is that color, socioeconomic, I think there's a bigger issue with socioeconomic background. I mean, there's poor kids where I am that Polish, Ukrainian, English, Irish, still in Aston, and they're not getting a look.
No.
Where do you live? Aston. Oh,
yeah.
I think the institute that's the governing bodies are missing the point. There's a whole swathe of children that are not getting a look in urban areas, regardless of race, color, or creed. Why is the game disappearing from the urban areas? But I can't put too much on the governing body. What I will say is that, to me, there's a systematic failure of the development of British coaches, both as professional coaches and amateur coaches, to develop coaching systems that sit and meet where we are, not where the Australians or Italians or French are, and really drive hard. This is what we do in the UK. Let's make sure that our systems for referees, coaches, athletes are maximized. Look at our resources and don't go looking for more. We have everything. Maximize them. Here's a big one for me. Return the game back to the school gym.
Interesting. That's a great point.
As a developmental issue.
Sure, yeah.
But the last one is you've got to re-engage Coach Dunning, Coach Packham. You've got to re-engage, if Joe was here, in what you do in your leadership things, not the tokenism that you do. Yeah. You can't have 500 years worth of experience and ignore it. And unfortunately, they do that. And they continue to do that.
And that's the reason that I ultimately have started the podcast. It's a great way to end, actually, for me to say this is one of my reasons to do this, because literally our coaching history, and we're not even talking about people like Brian Coleman, who started.
Yeah, and he started me.
Started these type of people that are Vic Ambler, guys that I had heard about that were names way back, way back. And then obviously, I'm talking about the people that are here now that still have a real energy to drive this sport forward, but more importantly, have almost been airbrushed away from the history of our game. And that's something that I can't accept.
Yes.
As a coach that revered and respected from there. So that's the reason why I put this series together. We are obviously going to have, professional coaches, and we're going to have the rising stars, but for me, the legends, of which you are one, are really important. The most important thing is to have that historical content. So with that, I really want to thank you. We could have gone for 3 hours. We've only gone for an hour and a half, and hopefully I can edit just a few minutes away. But I really appreciate it, Coach. It's fantastic.
Yeah, Coach, God bless you. No, I really appreciate it. I mean, as you say, I've watched you grow. I've watched you develop. You're leading light. But I think this is the kind of thing that may have some change. And I think as long as you're doing this, you're going to have a lot of followers, because what you've given me is a voice. Yeah. Here's a start.
Okay, appreciate that.
Otherwise, I don't have a voice.
Well, Coach, when we talk offline, let's talk about how people can actually contact you or have an ability to see what you see. So I will put something in all of the social media platforms that the podcast and that the video will go on, and we'll work on how people can actually engage with you in the future, because I think it's so important.
Brilliant. Brilliant. I've enjoyed that, T.
Really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you very much indeed.